Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to Aitareya Institute and our daily current affairs session. I am Aditya Singh. So as we have already stated this earlier also, current affairs are not just about knowing what happened. They are about understanding why it happened, how it impacts India and the world. Okay, they are about understanding all this. They are understanding about why is this happening, how is it impacting India and the world, and more importantly, what can actually UPSC ask from it. So in this session, we will decode everything, and we are going to discuss each and every aspect regarding this. Okay, so be prepared for this, and I hope you are connected with us during our sessions. So we'll decode the day's most important developments with complete prelims fact, mains analysis, and answer writing perspective as well. So let's get started with today's discussion. So first and foremost news is regarding UNFPA demographic features. It's a very important news. Now, demographic features, UNFPA. So a survey was conducted 2000, the demographic future survey 2026. What are its overviews? What are the key findings? So UNFPA lives, lives, choices and futures. This the name of the survey 2026. It's a cross-national study. It's a cross-national study of young adults, the age group between 18 to 39, and a sampling across more than 1 lakh internet-connected respondents across 73 countries. So a huge sample, a huge database is taken. So first and foremost thing here is the persistence of marriage ideals. Okay, so over two-thirds prefer arrangements involving marriage. So 36% favor marriage before cohabitation and 34% after cohabitation. Okay, so that is fairly divided. So one aspect is regarding this part, which is persistence of marriage ideals. Okay, so in your answers revolving around society, where a question on marriage is asked, marriage as an institution, you can quote this point. Second is aspiration versus reality gap. So among those who wish to partner, 25% remain single and are not dating. Okay, so 25% are single and are not dating, though they wish to have a partner. Higher, that figure is higher among men, that is 30%, and women, it is 19%. Okay, so this is the gap. Third is economic demands for partnership. So financial security is rated as the most important consideration in while engaging in a partnership, having a partner. Economic and housing barriers cited as primary obstacles, roughly around 57%. Next thing is regarding, so this was the economic demands for any kind of partnership. Next is preconditions for parenthood. Now, parenthood is also become a major hurdle today. I'm sure you must have heard about this idea of DINK. Now, this is rising, particularly in India also. DINK is double income, no kids. Double income and no kids. So, for this, the main issue for becoming a parent for the parents is the financial stability part. 88% of the people who are not having a child today are citing this reason that financial stability is the prime financial instability is the reason why they are not having a children, why they are not having a child. Okay, next is associated with it is the stable employment. A lot many parents today are not stably employed, and that is why they don't want to rear and have a child in that kind of scenario. And last thing is emotional readiness is also another major factor where uh, today that this figure is also substantially rising. Emotional readiness. A lot many couples are not ready emotionally to have a child. So these are your top non-negotiable thresholds before having a children. Next is declining achieved fertility. So average children among respondents aged 35 to 39, that is consistently lower than the ideal reported among younger cohorts across all the region. So as soon as the couple is aging, so the main issue with the aging couple is infertility. Okay, and that is why also there is fertility beyond that. You after age 35, their fertility starts dropping, and that is why also you have lesser number of children. So all these points, you can use it in your mains answers, in your mains answer to enrich. Now, this is what I mean when I say and when I talk about value addition. So these are live examples as to how and what you can quote and while writing your answers. So these are the kind of value additions that is needed in your answers. Okay, I hope this is fairly clear. In prelims, as such, no questions. I can guarantee you, no question would be asked around these data and these statistics. Okay, only in mains that you have to use it in order to make your answer a bit different from the rest. Okay, so main factor was economic security. So this is the percentage of respondents by perceived importance of key life goals. Okay, in this, if you talk about very important, so 71% feel economic security is very important, then health and physical well-being, then achieving educational and career goals, and so on and so forth. So you have family life, then personal lifestyle, and having a large network of friends. So that is the declining priority. But the most important priority here is this: the economic security, health and physical well-being, achieving educational and career goals. Okay, these three you can keep in mind. These three are the kind of a non-negotiables, and these are the aspects that you can use in your mains answers. Okay, so this was a survey. India specific, what are the India specific trend, what are the challenges, and what are some of the policy recommendations? So if we talk about India specific trend, women aged 18 to 39 desire 2.1 children. That is the ideal scenario, and that is the your replacement rate. This is also an ideal scenario. This is the replacement rate versus only one child actual among those aged between 30. So it's not that people and parents don't want to have more number of children. They actually want to have two children. But in reality, because of the factors which we have discussed, they're only able to make only one child in this age bracket. Okay, so this is the reality, and the reasons we have already discussed, like your economic reasons being the primary considerations. Men report 2.2 ideals versus 1.1 actual, a sharp aspirational reality gap. Okay, among childless respondents aged 35 to 39, nearly 85% express strong desire to become parents. So all those parents who don't have a child between age 35 to 39, 85% want to become parents. 66% of global youth feel positive about the future, and West and Central Africa leads that optimism. Okay, so West and Central Africa, they are also a kind of a demographic transition that is happening today. So what are the challenges? Challenges are quite obvious. The housing cost, especially in the urban areas, that has risen substantially, and job instability, and that is why you see the rise of gig economy, and that gig economy is associated with the kind of job instability that they have. Okay, so multiple aspect, your housing cost as well as job instability is is kind of creating a major challenge for the parents. Okay, so macro environmental anxiety, three out of four youth feel deeply worried about the environmental anxiety, the kind of pollution levels, especially in areas like Delhi NCR. So for how long can you keep a child in, let's say, air purifier? It At one point of time the child has to go out, and that is why there is a bit of environmental anxiety along with anxiety around climate change as well, because now the parents are educated, so they are well aware about the environment, pollution that is happening, the climate change that is happening, and they don't want to rear their child in that scenario. Unequal care burden is still a reality. You can use this fact. 29% disapprove of mothers working full time versus 20% for fathers. Only 39% feel governments provide adequate support for the families. So yes, governmental support is lacking. Governmental support, let's say like creche support for working women, creche support. And India has also initiated some of the schemes, where for child support. But still 40% of the feel that government is not providing enough for young families, for supporting that young family. So what are the recommendations? Enhancing the economic security and encouraging affordable housing, and expand the gender equitable parental leave. Okay, this is one thing that you must write, that gender equitable parent leave is something that you must encourage. Promoting equitable share of unpaid care work, because if we talk about the unpaid care work, it is mainly the women still across various countries that they have to bear that burden. So, moreover, adopt a rights-based demographic framework. Rights-based. Okay, rights-based demographic framework you have to create. So that will shift away from rigid birth targets towards individual reproductive agency, because uh, a lot many times government is providing specific targets in order to reduce the number of children in, let's say, a developing nation or an overpopulated nation like India, like we have our family plans. Okay, but the idea is to shift away from these rigid birth targets and towards giving that agency to the individuals to have those rights. This could be achieved through proper healthcare, through proper education. Okay, so these are the aspects that you need to focus upon. So moving on, India's next important news article is regarding India's Gen Z. Okay, the term which has become quite popular, the Gen Z, and the unemployment scenario associated with it. And this is what is getting reflected in the protests as well, the Delhi protests that are ongoing. So first of all, what are Gen Zs? So those which are born after 1997 to 2012. So they are aged between 15 to 26 today. As of now, they are aged between 15 to 26. So that constitutes a talent pool of approximately 30 crores people, which is world's largest youth cohort. According to the periodic labor force survey 2023-24, it reveals a widening job transition crisis despite India's much cited demographic dividend. Okay, so what we have been talking about, first of all, you can use this number that you can use this figure that the Gen Z comprises of around 30 crore people. 30 crore people, which is world's largest youth cohort in the entire world. And second thing is a widening job transition crisis. What we have been focusing right now is demographic dividend. Demographic dividend. We need to tap this demographic dividend. It's a potential. Demographic dividend is a potential for what? For higher economic growth. Economic growth of the nation. So essentially, when you have a large amount of youth population, then that provides an advantage to the nation in terms of higher rate of economic growth. So that's an incentive, that's a potential which could be realized. But in order for you to tap on that demographic dividend, you need certain conditions, like you need to focus first and foremost on the education aspect, and which is why the focus the new education policy which was brought in in 2020, it focused a lot on vocational education. Okay. Second aspect is associated with this is skilling. Skilling. Another aspect is health. If the person is unhealthy, so a lot of the productive years would be wasted in terms of the health scenarios. And last important aspect is job opportunities. Job opportunities. So when you have all these factors together combined, then only you will be able to realize the true potential of the demographic dividend. Then only you will witness a higher rate of economic growth. This is what was witnessed, a famous example of South Korea, even in China. So let's say in South Korea, if let's say your economic growth rate was like this, then it suddenly rose sharply. Okay, so that rise was sudden during this phase of demography because it gave an advantage to them. But how come South Korea was able to realize this potential? Because it worked consistently on education, it worked consistently on health, skilling, and ensured that all those peoples who are talented and capable enough are provided certain appropriate job avenues to absorb that workforce. And this is why this topic becomes very important. So low formal wage absorption, only 14% of the Gen Z males and even lesser for the females, only hardly less than 5% are regular wage earners. Rest are just casual laborers or unpaid family workers. And unpaid family workers, especially your women section. Next important thing with regards to your Gen Zs is high informality. So around 80% of the Gen Z workers completely lack the social security coverage. This is an important thing. And this is where, since they lack the social security coverage, they are at a higher risk if any unforeseen circumstances arise, let's say due to health or any kind of, so there is no safety net. And this is why social security, you may not realize the significance of social security, but when you'll get into the workforce, then you will understand the significance of having that safety net. Okay, only 14% hold a formal employment contract. That is that all these factors do not reflect, a stable job structure, a stable job architecture. So you have a depressed labor force participation. Even whatever Gen Zs you have, they are not willing or capable enough to work in, or participate in the labor force. So merely if you talk about the Gen Z LFPR stand at just 41% compared to 75% for millennials. So that's a sharp drop for that's a sharp drop for both, especially for young women, that is 28%. And rural areas, it is 21.1% for urban. Okay, so all these are very, sad statistics and facts, not good for the nation in terms of the economic growth. Okay, and overall also in terms of the social growth also, these are not, healthy looking parameters. So 41%, can you just imagine the fact that a large chunk of the Gen Z are not even willing enough, because they might be so hopeless in the job architecture that they are not even willing enough to participate or become a part of labor force. Okay, and if you talk about domestic burden, 27% of the Gen Z females are engaged exclusively in unpaid domestic duties versus only 0.32%. So this, in terms of the social aspect, this is a very sad fact, and that essentially reflects that the patriarchal norms have not vanished even in the Gen Zs. They are still prevalent. They are still very much part of the social reality. So very important facts. I think you must remember and use these facts wherever possible. Very good facts. Okay. India's Gen Z, what are the causes? First of all, talking about the root causes. First and foremost thing is education to work mismatch. So you have these degrees. A lot many times this concern has been raised that people have the degrees and degrees prioritized over practical reality, as in the work, the kind of skill that is needed in the industry, that the degrees, the kind of education that is provided in the university, there is a lot of gap between them. So that is that we are still unable to cope up with that, and especially in the advent of artificial intelligence, machine learning, in this era, it becomes even more pertinent to keep on upskilling your skills, upskilling yourself, to keep on reskilling yourself. So industry relevant skills are generally absent, or there's a huge mismatch, leading to credential inflation without job readiness. Okay, so you, despite such a large pool of workers, the kind of skills that they have, they are not matching the industry standard. That this is where it leads to higher inflation. The higher inflation, why? Because the overall productivity comes down. The overall productivity that substantially reduces. Despite that, a lot many people are ready to do the job, but they are not capable or skilled enough to do that, to fill up that particular kind of job. And this is where is your education to work mismatch. Second important thing that has happened is very important thing that has happened is your automation and AI disruption. Okay, artificial intelligence has entirely disrupted the job and employment architecture. So entry level white collar and administrative roles are increasingly getting displaced by the technology. Okay, so this is often termed as structural structural unemployment. And Gen Zs are going to face more of this because the technology is rapidly advancing because of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So this is the second most important root cause of the unemployment. Third, a social thing, which is the barriers for women are still present. They have not vanished or disappeared. They are still very much a part of the reality of our social order. So lack of affordable childcare, affordable childcare is still a very much reality. Safety concerns during the commutes. N number of events you have heard, you have read that women are still unsafe during commutes despite endless efforts being undertaken by the government, by various sections of the society. Still, this is still a major concern. Women are unable to work at night for longer period of time. They have to commute. If they have to commute for longer distances, their parents may not allow. Okay. And unequal domestic expectations. Okay. So this is where comes the issue around double burden of work. Double burden of work. That the women, that the expectation that they have to work at home, that has not vanished away. So this is why the women have to work their jobs as well as at home. So this is the double burden of work that the women have to undergo. Last but not the least, this is about informalization. So you have the rise of gig roles and contract workers, which is increasingly replacing the stable long-term jobs with social security. And the major challenge, despite various measures, the biggest challenge with the gig roles and contract work is that they lack social security. So sometimes it becomes very mentally taxing and tolling. Okay, and Why is this? Because majority, still around 85% of the workforce, of the labor force, is associated with informal sector. Okay, so what are the implications? You have it squanders the demographic dividend. You won't be able to realize its true potential. It depresses the household consumption demand. So that demands get reduced if you don't have, है ना? If you don't have the disposable income, and this disposable income is reducing. Why reducing? Because of the fact of rising inflation. If the inflation is, let's say, rising, your disposable income is reducing. How will you be able to spend your income on the consumption? So naturally your consumption demand is going to reduce and reinforce gender inequality and create all in all, it creates social unrest. The Cockroach Janata Party is a prime example of this. Yes, and this is somehow attached with all of that. You know? So Cockroach Janata Party and the ongoing protest, and those are visible proofs that there is a high amount of social unrest in the nation. Okay. Next important aspect is expand. What is the now moving towards the way forward? So complete mains kind of perspective. Expand the labor intensive manufacturing. Labor intensive. This is why how you will be able to absorb a large amount of labor force and not necessarily relying on the technology to replace the labor, but rather focusing and incentivizing all those sectors which are labor intensive. Like you have your textiles, you have your food processing sector, you have your construction to absorb the casual workers into a former roles. Okay. Next is mandate the school to work pipelines. Okay. School to work. What does it mean? It means linking degrees to industry-led apprenticeship. Okay. So that connection needs to be abridged. And this is where you'll be able to provide them with adequate skills which are needed for the industry. Next is female enabling work and this point you must have to write. Like, I mean, these arguments may seem to be simplistic or mundane, boring, but these are still very much relevant and important in the present day reality of India. You still require safe transport, you still require subsidized childcare and flexible work arrangements for the women, considering the fact that they have to manage not only their jobs but also their home. This is where flexible work arrangements comes in. Okay. Next aspect is implement urban employment frameworks. What exactly do you want to change? You want to inculcate the social security for the gig workers. And this is what has been talked about in the four labor codes that the government has released. So it is the first government in the entire world which talks about social security for the gig workers. This is why it becomes very important. Okay. Okay. Next aspect is the Gen Z's adulthood. Now, this is also an important aspect, the adulthood. So, what is adulthood? So, it describes a new life phase where traditional milestones like your stable employment, your home ownership, what all do you require? What are the milestones that the Gen Zs would require? One is your employment, second is your home ownership, third is your marriage, and fourth is your long-term careers. So these are the four aspects needed for a stable life: your employment, home, marriage, and long-term career. Four things. Now all of this is getting delayed or getting becoming uncertain due to shifting economic and social conditions. So this is the phase of the adulthood which is getting delayed. Next aspect is origin. So it draws its origin from sociologist Zygmunt Bauman's liquid modernity theory. So this theory, uh, you can note it down. You must note it down whenever you're writing. Any answers on Gen Zs? So it argues that modern society is characterized by fluid identities, temporary relationships, and constant institutional change rather than stable structures. So, three aspects are what characterize the modern society. One is fluid identity, second is temporary relationships, and third is the constant institutional changes. So, don't expect stability in the present day setup. What is fluid identity? So individuals constantly reshape, they are changing their identity rather than inheriting any fixed social roles, which is determined by, generally your social roles. Who determine them? Your community, your family, your community, or your profession. So all these fixed aspects are becoming fluid day by day, especially with the advent of Gen Z generation. Next is economic insecurity. You have why economic insecurity? We have already discussed this. You have high housing cost. Second is unstable employment. Third is rising living expenses. So three factors. Now all these three factors are delaying the financial independence well into the adulthood. Okay. Another aspect is work culture is changing. How come the work culture is changing? You have short-term jobs, you have gig work, you have AI-driven workplace disruption. Very, very important. And all this has traditional life, replaced the lifelong careers and company loyalty. Okay, this has entirely changed. So work culture is constantly evolving, changing. Your economic insecurity is happening. Your relationships are also evolving, like your marriage and the family formation. All this is getting delayed. You have digital platforms and flexible relationship structures. Now that have become very relevant. You know, even Supreme Court has recognized live-in relationships. I think it was way back in 2018 or 19. So, what does it reflect? It reflects the evolving relationships. Okay, though there are very various challenges associated with live-in relationships, but it is a reality of the present day setup. So, all these aspects, and now if you include all these points, this is like subheadings of your answers. If you include these in your point, that will make your answers look extremely different, and it will make your answers, exactly pertinent to the constant changing reality that is happening. So, significance of this concept challenges the social indicators of adulthood and highlights rapidly changing socioeconomic realities for the younger generations across the world. This is happening. Now, what you require is reforms, structural reforms in employment, in housing. What you require is affordable housing, and this is where the role of government can come in. Affordable housing, education, the kind of education that you need, that education needs to consistently evolve and change, especially on account of skills that are needed in the present day reality. Okay, that must be aligned with AI, that should be aligned with machine learning. You must have social security gives you that kind of mental peace. Yes, so social security is directly connected also with mental health, and as a separate subject, mental health is becoming day by day important because of high rate of anxiety in the society. The anxiety in the society, especially in the Gen Z, that is rising. Clinically diagnosed anxiety, chronic disease. It impacts the amount of hours, productive work hours of the people. So mental health is a very important. This is why your therapy sessions are rising. You have your psychologist, the profession of psychologist, that is rapidly rising in India and even across the world, because the mental health challenges are very uh, are rising in the Gen Z generation. And support systems to meaningfully serve the young adults. So these are the challenges that are facing. Reveal tensions between individual aspirations and societal expectations. So still society, it is not the society is leaving you. Society still imposes those norms, but how will you resolve the individual aspirations and the societal expectations? You need to resolve that tension in order for you to make a harmonious society. Then this is particularly relevant for India's rapidly urbanizing and digitally connected youth. Okay, so all these aspects you can utilize even in essays. If you have essays on youth and changing aspirations, or technology and society, future of work, demographic transition, everywhere you can use this. So across GS paper, this topics becomes very important. Moving on. Now the next topic of discussion is E-commerce Council of India. E-commerce Council of India. So what is E-commerce Council of India? It's a first of kind national industry council established under the aegis of Internet and Mobile Association of India. So this was launched in Bangalore. So what it is an umbrella body. Umbrella body, what the function, what is the function that it will serve? It will bridge and a bridging private digital platforms, logistical firms and payment providers along with government regulators to present a single voice for digital trade policy. So idea is to create a digital trade policy, and in order to create a digital trade policy you require an umbrella body which will encompass all the important stakeholders. So these are your crucial stakeholders that you need to take into account while formulating a digital trade policy. Your private digital platforms, your logistical firms, your payment providers, along with even your government regulators. So what they will do? They will undertake policy advocacy. So structured interface with policymakers, offering research and industry data to shape regulations and around the digital payments, consumer protection and online commerce. So all kind of aspects, the policy will be created, and this is the body, the ECCI, E-commerce Council of India. This is the body that is going to shape all the laws. This is going to advise the government to make these kind of regulations in order to regulate the digital payments, your consumer protection, as well as online commerce. So all the important aspect, these three aspects are the important aspect, and these three aspects will be covered. You will have cross-border trade and logistics. So this focuses simply on cross-border e-commerce, which is happening across, let's say, between India or let's say US, that is happening. So you need to simplify the cross-border e-commerce and help the Indian brands, help the exporters and the MSME, these three aspects. And MSMEs, if you talk about MSME, majority of your exports are associated by MSMEs. MSMEs are the key growth drivers of India. A huge amount of employment is associated with MSMEs. So the idea is to support the Indian brands, the Indian exporters, as well as MSMEs. MSME digital onboarding, very, very, very important. Now you have to develop framework to help the micro, small, and medium enterprises to transition to digital business models. Okay, so the entire idea is to convert and transform themselves into a digital model. Why digital model? What will be the benefit? The accessibility part. With this, you will have greater market accessibility. You have a wider market. This will improve with the digital business models if the MSMEs are able to transform themselves. Next is AI and technology integration. So guidelines are being set for adopting the AI powered commerce. So everything in almost every next every in almost every discussion now, what you are witnessing is the integration of artificial intelligence. So even in commerce, you have to create guidelines for adopting AI powered commerce, quick commerce logistics, and digital payment infrastructure at scale, at a bigger scale. Okay, so first of all, for prelims point of view, you have to remember what is it, and what does the body comprises of. Okay, so first thing is what, this you have to prepare from the point of prelims. Next, from the point of view of mains, You have to focus upon these kind of aspects, like what will be the function. One will be policy advocacy, second will be cross-border trade and logistics, third will be MSME digital onboarding, and fourth will be AI and technology integration, okay, into the e-commerce sector. So it's a revolutionary move. You have to keep a note of it, especially for the mains. So what is the significance? This is entirely not from the point of view of prelims, but mainly from the point of view of mains. So you will witness a unified industry voice. As we have seen, integrated voices from different stakeholders were getting integrated. So you will have a unified industry voice. So this will bring the e-commerce, mobility, travel, D2C and digital platforms under one umbrella to address the challenges collectively. So your e-commerce, mobility, travel, D2C, digital, all will be under one umbrella. Now this will ensure consistent industry representation during policy deliberation, and we have already discussed it. One of the key roles that was that this ECCI will be performing is policy advocacy. Policy advocacy, and you cannot formulate a proper policy without taking into account all the stakeholders together. So this is why you require ECCI. That will be the role, that will be the function that it will carry out. Next is government industry collaboration. Very, very important. If there is a disconnect between industry and government, the major challenge will be on formulation of policy. The policy might not be formed as per the needs and demands of the industry. It might backlash. And if there are grievances, if let's say you have there is government industry collaboration, and in future if you have, let's say, any grievances arise, so those grievances could be effectively dealt with if you have that kind of collaboration with the government. So how will it help? It will essentially promote what? A stable long-term policies. And unlike what we have seen since post-independence, that with the change in government, the policies also keep on changing. But what you actually require is stability. You require long-term policy, and this will can only be provided when the governmental policies are aligned with the needs and demands of industry for it to grow at a rapid pace. So this is how this will promote stable long-term policies, because you will have constant dialogue and discussions. Encourage innovation and investment in India's growing $120 billion digital e-commerce system. Okay. So plan is to host annual e-commerce summit for the stakeholders dialogue. Annually, this dialogue will be happening, in which all the stakeholders can raise their grievances, can raise their demands with the government, and then government can effectively formulate a policy which will be beneficial for each of the stakeholders, along with the government, along with primarily the nation at whole. Okay. Third important significance is that the idea is also to empower MSMEs. How will you empower MSMEs? Okay, how will you empower MSME? By removing any such barriers, especially for the small businesses who want to enter the digital economy and even the international trade channels. Okay, so that these small businesses can also become exporters across the nation. You will have cross-border trade. So this ECCI is going to support that by removing all those barriers. So supports India's broader Digital India and Atmanirbhar Bharat policy initiatives. So as we all know, the agenda of creating a Vikasit Bharat by 2047 can only be envisaged, है ना, if different sectors become Atmanirbhar, become independent. Okay, so this is where the role of ECCI becomes very important in order to push towards the goal and agenda of making India a Vikasit Bharat, a developed nation by 2047. Okay, so I hope we had a fair bit of discussion, and if you have any doubt, you know, because we have been covering the things in quite detail. So unlike other educators who focus primarily on the prelims part, I tend to also focus on the mains perspective, the value addition that you can inculcate in order to make your answers a bit different from the rest. Please remember, each and every marks, and each one marks, let's say, in one question, and cumulated over, let's say, 20 questions will give you an edge of 20 marks over the other aspirants. And this is why it becomes very pertinent to go into a certain level of depth in order to make your answers functional and effective. Okay. I hope you liked today's discussion. Please do mention it in the comment section if you have any doubt. Okay. So see you in the next session.